Zoomers, my brethren, why can't you read? This is a very important question. Over centuries, people have been reading for fun. I know this may sound like somewhat of a novel concept, not sitting around on your phone, not doing whatever it is that you may do on your phone, and instead sitting down with a good book and reading. This seems to be very troublesome for some younger people, and I wanted to investigate it. But along with reading, you also can't write. I see you down there typing away in your little comments. You can't do writing properly. You can't speak English properly. So buy the Trivium, and then maybe you'll be worthy of commenting on anything that I do. £375 for the grammar, logic, and rhetoric courses, or if you'd like to give us even more money, you can buy them all individually for £150 each. That's my preferred option because it is far more expensive. Thank you very much. Buy them now. Anyway, so this has been going around recently, and it caused a bit of a wave where people were asking how accurate this was. Was this person, Cairo Smith, never encountered them before, so this was my first exposure to this particular account, saying that he'd spoken to a literary agent who told him that teens can't read third-person omniscient anymore. Now, this is unusual for me because whenever I've read fiction in the past, it's much more common to read books written from third person than from first person. A lot of the fiction that I've enjoyed as a teenager, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, going back to my childhood, Harry Potter, the Song of Ice and Fire book series, and George R. R. Martin's other works, all tend to be written in varying degrees of third person, either omniscient or a third person that's more informed by the perspective of the character that you're following. But either way, it's a very familiar mode of reading to me. The only first person book that I can really think of is quite a unique one that is really stuck in my mind was the book LA Confidential that was turned into the 1990s film.
Never read the book.
The book's excellent. It's written from first-person perspective in very clipped, short sentences that mirror 1950s slang to really get you into the mind of the characters. So that can be effective. But it just confused me to think that these, apparently, according to a literary agent, the younger people can't read in this style anymore, which would, of course, encourage people going to literary agents and trying to get published to purely write in first person.
The only book that I remember that was first person was American Psycho.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but that's a very intentional one as well. You also get people like Stephen King who write in third...
whether it was a memoir.
Stephen King writes in third person, but he interjects the character's thoughts in there, so you get a little bit of first person as well. But there's all sorts of different ways. So to be able to cut yourself off from a huge swath of literature seems confusing to me. And he'd posted about this before, saying that young adults, of course teenagers, most of their literature they're going to be reading is probably going to be young adult fiction, YA fiction, whatever you want to call it.
Young adult.
Young adult. Yeah, it's like the Twilight books, the Hunger Games books, Harry Potter as well, things like that. Apparently in the more recent stuff, and you got this little excerpt from a 2024 Rainbow Book List, which was of course it was the gay book list, saying that it isn't even comparing books in the tagline anymore as inspirations, just movies. So in this one, Abida Jaigirdar, author of one of Time's best young adult books of all time, gives Titanic an Ocean's 8 makeover in this nail-biting heist set on board the infamous ship. Why don't you actually use literary sources to compare your literary fiction novel to, rather than films? Well, I imagine it's because most of young people's cultural references these days come more from films than literature, because people sadly read less and less. But again, all of this was just the word of this one person. So I decided to do a little bit of looking into it. And then all of a sudden afterwards, this hits the algorithm and I come across this, which is somebody posting saying that they find out that the book that they've been waiting to read for weeks is in third person and they immediately abandon it. Very strange. So maybe there is something to this. And then I found this from last year. Now, of course, I can't see the post that it's replying to because the person it's replying to is a part of the castration committee and has their posts protected. But it seemed to be in response to Book Talk.
Right.
being book-focused TikTok, complaining about third person, whereas this person responding is saying third person's the best POV to write in. I don't know what BookTok is on about. So I found a thread to follow here, okay? Which is, it seems that a lot of this is coming from people posting on TikTok about how much they hate reading in third person. So I thought, is there any truth to this?
Is there something actually called BookTok?
It's a hashtag on TikTok.
It's a hashtag. It's not really.
I don't actually go on TikTok.
BookTok.
I've just discovered a lot of this just today.
I'm just thinking an app there
Objectivity is foreign to them.
Yeah, where people just complain about thirst and third on an app. You know, I wouldn't think there's a massive audience for that, but maybe I'm wrong.
So I went on TikTok, and the search function on TikTok, by the way, is abysmal. I don't know how people find anything they're looking for on there. But I typed...
Scrolling down endlessly.
Yeah, clearly.
4 days later.
I did the hashtag BookTok and then typed in third person. And I'm starting to sound like Dan when he's doing his boomer segments where he's explaining how he figured out how to Google things for the first time ever. But the first one that I found was this, where it was somebody who got, 54,000 likes.
All of them are like innuendos.
Bragging about how they can read a book in third person, as if it's some kind of achievement to be able to read a book that's not strictly from the character's perspective, that has a level of descriptiveness to it outside of their mind.
Next to the one that's got 100,000 that said I could read my name.
That might be. That might be. So that
I'm actually called Phil.
So
I think we need to react by talking about ourselves to in the third person.
So Harry, upon describing this to Stephen and Stelios, proceeded to show them this TikTok by clicking on the mouse.
Stephen turned to Harry and laughed.
Yeah. So here you can see a selection of books that I've never heard of, that I can assume are all written in the third person. No, let's not go on to any more. Thank you very much.
No.
And
Stelios approved of the crane.
And then I found the ones that people must be reacting to in the first place, which is this one. So here's one that's got almost 5,000 likes. When you excited it, this is why you need the trivium, folks. You can't write.
I'm just looking. She can't even exited. When you exited, can't even use the C in there.
Yeah, when you exited, yes, you're right, about starting a new book, but realise it's in third person. At least they figured out what an apostrophe is.
Yeah, so it's in the third person.
Here we see her opening the book.
Never read in my life, and she's gone to the back page.
And I assume she's mirrored the image for some reason, so she abandons it.
Who would make a video like that, and why are people watching it? Honestly, I just can't understand it.
I am confused by this somewhat, because I'm like, is this...
Scrolling through time and time, and I said, please don't do TikTok, please don't do this. I mean, it's frazzling your brain. I've got to the stage where I'm wondering, is there a way that I can connect a phone and just have electric shocks every time she tries to scroll down? So eventually it becomes a learned habit never to touch a phone on TikTok. Or is that cruel?
I do get confused, thinking, like, is this people being ironic? So I searched for a little bit more. This one... 423
is this people
1,000 are okay 1,000 likes on this one, again saying excited, she spelled it right to read my new book until, and then she realizes
it's got pages.
It's in third person, so she just abandons it. And again, the question is, can I go back on this? God, I hate this platform. The question was, is this ironic? So I went to the replies to see if there was anything. For God's sake. Either way, I looked through the replies and there were dozens of heavily upvoted replies saying, yeah, I can't stand when a book's in third person, and it all seemed to be thoroughly sincere. These people can't read in third person. And there was another one, again, almost 4,000 likes, and then she's just realised that, oh no, the latest book in this series is for some reason written in third person, so therefore I can't enjoy this anymore. And there was another one, and not only is this one in third person, it's got multiple POVs as well, which is even more confusing.
What, you mean there's not more than one character?
There's more than one character, I know. That's very difficult to follow because it doesn't appeal to the narcissism, I assume, of these readers.
I I. I mean, it must be really difficult when you open a page and it has another letter in it.
You're making it sound very easy to write, though, so maybe that's one of the reasons they're so popular. And, of course, it wouldn't be TikTok without one of them complaining about how white all these books are.
White. All of them are white. White. All of them are white.
So that was just what you expect from there. And again, I wanted to double check if this was all just being ironic. So I found people on Reddit saying, "Is this a joke? Is this a joke?" And I scrolled through some of the replies, and one person said that there is a subsection of TikTok book readers that vastly prefer first person. I only heard about it because an author I followed talked about joining a group with some of these people, and they literally kicked her out of the group because she said that she preferred third person and shifting perspectives. So they're very protective over how retarded they are.
I just don't believe it. It's just
very strange.
I've got to admit, when I'm looking at this, and I try to keep up with things, in technology and advancing in AI. I taught myself how to use Adobe Illustrator and graphics, and I keep going all these different ways of trying to keep myself up to date. But I have to admit, when I'm looking at this and thinking, you don't read, it's all about third person. Mm-hmm. It starts to make me feel like I'm a boomer.
And then
I actually like books.
And
I'm turning the page.
I wanted to see what these people were reading and what some of the bestsellers were. So I Googled, I think it was Young Adult Fiction Bestsellers 2024. And it came up with a few results. One of them was Waterstones, which is probably the biggest book retailer in the UK. Their blog of the best books of 2024 for teen and young adults. So I scrolled through some of this and I just checked out. I just Googled the name of this one and what perspective it was written in. This one, actually, I believe, was written in third person, as was this one. The rest of them, though, as you go down, all in first person. Also, you get ones where young adult fiction, YA fiction, is actually not as white as that girl wanted you to believe, because a lot of it is written by people like this Farida Abike. That's not a very European name that I'm familiar with. And a lot of it's also really gay, unsurprisingly, like Loverbirds, where it's a lesbian relationship, and this Rani Chowdhury Must Die thing, where it looks pretty gay. This looks pretty multicultural and gay as well. Yeah, so there is quite a bit of inclusivity and diversity.
All of them are like innuendos. The titles are innuendos.
You know when you wish you had unending amounts of money and like you wish you were a billionaire, not just the fact that you might actually be able to buy a house.
Yeah, I'd leave Earth.
That would be a good thing in today's world. But actually, the idea of being able to have a billionaire is because there's one company, one of the many companies that I would love to buy and just destroy, and that is Waterstones. I mean, I would really love to be able to buy up all of Waterstones, destroy the brand, destroy the image, destroy those, fire everybody in there, and actually get back to having some normal books.
Well, that's the thing.
Every time I go in there, can you ever find anything that's conservative or right wing? That's occasionally there's one.
I mean, you can find some decent old classic philosophy from like Nietzsche.
Yeah,
and
in a corner somewhere.
Typically,
books
sometimes
for weirdos section.
Sometimes they'll stock people like Roger Scruton. I find his books sometimes. Beyond that, the most conservative that you're going to get are old history books written by conservative men. But this is an interesting one as well here. This is the most inclusive and diverse that I've seen so far. Lesbian romance between diverse woman and fat chick. We're reaching levels of inclusivity never before seen. I assume that one of them doesn't think they're a boy or a girl either. There was the other result that I got, which was the Goodreads website, readers' favourite young adult fiction.
This is another one.
The first one, this is one that I see promoted everywhere, which is Heartstopper, which is a graphic novel series, a gay graphic novel series, unsurprisingly. And you don't just see this promoted in bookshops. You go into other media shops like HMV, about the place, they'll have it front and centre, so around the children's sections as well.
Exactly, I've seen this.
It's all about
when they had a gathering and an event for children, they had this book and books
Yes.
the
And then
similar
you
caliber.
Then you get some repeats of some of the other ones around there, like this one by that non-European sounding woman. And the funniest one though was that
I know. I did the. You remember the segment I did with the Welsh literature and gay Arturiana?
oh wait,
That was one of it. Gwen and Art are not in love.
Yeah.
by Lex Croucher. Lex Croucher. I just want to double check something about that person. Lex Croucher is
Heartstopper meets a Knight's Tale.
is a woman. That's the other
Yeah.
thing. All of this stuff is written by women.
Can we see the description?
Oh, what for this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, Heartstopper meets A Knight's Tale in this queer medieval rom-com YA debut about love, friendship, and being brave enough to change the course of history.
Yeah.
Written by an English woman.
You see, you have King Arthur and Lancelot there.
Just the joy I would also have in being able to put all these writers out of business.
Yes, I would
I'm
not
just-
stock their books.
I wouldn't. I mean,
But-
basically, if they want to do it, they can find some little corner shop next to a barber's.
But the funniest one that I found was that when I did my Google search, these were only the second and third results that popped up. The first was this little bar that comes up of Amazon books that it recommends you under the search terms. And the first one listed in that was this: The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abby Darry, where you can, or Dare or whatever, where you can see the front cover, which just seems to be Loud Black Girl, the novel. Interesting, very interesting. So no wonder people are reading less and less if this is the kind of selection that you have, especially given that so much of this is dedicated purely to indoctrination, identitarianism regarding immutable progressive characteristics. It's all incredibly self-obsessed. The vast majority of it will be written into a first-person narrative perspective so that it will draw you into it, and also because I would assume you putting yourself in the mind of that character when the whole message is progressive is going to be a more effective way of indoctrinating you as you read as well. There was another theory that I saw regarding the original post, though, as well, which is, of course, changing demographics, where the younger people are going to be people who are made up of a greater diversity of groups. So this person said that half of under 25s being black or Latino, and I followed this up as well when I first saw this one by basically making the point of this skews all sorts of mass demographic or mass statistical analysis, where you get headlines saying things like English jaws are getting smaller, English are getting shorter, getting more heart disease, getting fatter, becoming stupider, not reading as much, etc., 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 when the fact of the matter is that they will be massively skewed by people coming from different cultures who have different physical characteristics than the rest of us as well. And you see this again, as I pointed out in my segment yesterday, where everybody notices this, everybody points out that this is what's happening, but they don't take it into account when they're looking at the more mass statistical analysis of these things. And also, again, going back to the young adult literature is too white. Actually, there is stuff that points out that young adult fiction is actually some of the most inclusive fiction as well. And this, I think, is only a small part of it because...
Well, if you force a different culture and ideology upon the majority, then they're going to have to read something, and they'll either switch off or not.
Yeah.
But the other thing about this is the way that I see it in schools, and my daughter was talking about, King Arthur, and I've got a collection of old English books on King Arthur.
Oh, yes.
Including the old poetry and Morte d'Arthur, for example. And I said, are you talking about that? And they went, no, it's a modern version. And when I said, can I pick
a
it up?
subverted, compromised version.
They weren't allowed to take the book out of school to bring it home, or at least
I wonder why.
I would like to see it. I would like to see what you're seeing about the history of King Arthur. How about you take this book in the 1722 that I own about this Morte d'Arthur and go and show your teacher? You wouldn't be interested. There you go. You wouldn't be able to see the original written there about the stories of where it comes from.
But these kinds of narcissistic, self-absorbed, overtly progressive novels do seem to be very popular. This article comes from 2023, but they pointed out that in the 5 years between 2018 and 2023, YA fiction print sales had increased by 50%. Now, I find it difficult to believe bestseller lists and print book sales in the first place, mainly because you don't really get straight statistics for them, because a lot of them will count, say, being placed in libraries as book sales as well, when you get these books into libraries.
I didn't know that.
And you also find, like, the New York Times bestseller list is very shadowy with how they correlate what constitutes a bestseller. They're not transparent at all with how they're determining how many sales books have made. So it can be quite difficult to determine this. But either way, if that is the case, that they are being more read than ever, that could also be part of this. The fact that the books that are being marketed to young people are entirely written from the first person, and also kind of put you in a state of mind where you can only experience these stories in the first person because they're entirely self-absorbed and self-obsessed, there to draw you into these characters' progressive struggles anyway. In 2021, research by the Book Trust found that 11.7% of children books authors were people of colour, which had risen from 5.6% in 2017. Combine that with how inclusive the stories in general tend to be on sexual characteristics and other things as well. A great success for DEI and inclusivity. And also, research found that 78%, now this is a concerning figure, of over 18 buyers are purchasing YA books with the intention of reading them themselves. So you're getting people who are over the target audience age who are reading these books for pleasure in the first place. And this is more than just a worry about the ability of young people to read in a particular perspective, whether that be first person or third person in the first place. It also goes into the wider trend that we've been seeing for ages, that people just aren't reading books anywhere near as much as they used to, and some can't read books anywhere near as much as they used to. Now, this is data talking about Columbia University, along with a number of other universities in America, where they're talking about, for instance, no comprehensive data exists on this trend, but the majority of the 33 professors that this journalist, Rose Horowitz, spoke with relayed experiences where many discussed the change at faculty meetings and in conversations with fellow instructors. Anthony Grafton, a Princeton historian, said his students arrive on campus with a narrower vocabulary and less understanding of language than they used to have. There are always students who read insightfully and easily and write beautifully, he said, but now they are more exceptions than the rule. Jack Chen, a Chinese literature professor at the University of Virginia, finds his students shutting down when confronted with ideas they didn't understand. They're less able to persist through a challenging text than they used to be. Daniel Shaw, the chair of Georgetown's English department, told the journalist that his students have trouble staying focused on even a sonnet. Failing to complete a 14-line poem without succumbing to distraction suggests one familiar explanation, as suggested by this journalist, for the decline in reading aptitude, which would be smartphones distracting people. I certainly think that is going to be one factor. I think the other factor with it affecting universities so much would be DEI practices. Explicitly getting in students of a lower caliber purely to make up quota numbers. I think that's clearly one of the reasons that isn't addressed in this as well.
Not being encouraged to read, but it does go to the kind of view that I've formed over that the elite colleges that are pumping out the people going into the media, into politics, into business are thick.
Yes, that's clearly a problem. And the people going into the universities are...
If you can't read a book and you're supposed to be Oxford and Cambridge and Columbia, then I would say quite clearly you're thick.
Well, and to draw it all the way back to the young adult fiction as well, one of the one of the final paragraphs of this Atlantic article is quite indicative, saying that over and over the professors I spoke with painted a grim picture of young people's reading habits. The historian Adrian Johns was one dissenter, but allowed, my experience is a bit unusual because the University of Chicago is the last bastion of people who do read things. So there is apparently one university where people still go to learn and do the thing that they signed up for. For years, Dames has asked his first students, Dames being one of the people that was interviewed for this, about their favourite book. In the past, I cited books such as Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, 2 books that I read as part of my A-level English course.
Yeah.
Now, he says, almost half of them cite young adult books. Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series seems to be a particular favourite. So that is the kind of calibre of books that people are going to. They're not going to the classics. They're not going to more cultured literature. Yeah. They're reading self-absorbed, narcissistic bog roll.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.